Hey, sports fans, Larry to RunBlogRun is Athletics Chat 34, your favorite time of the week. There's the charming Stuart Weir in Oxford, England, the intellectual capital of the world. And I am in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, between Madison and Milwaukee, one of my favorite places in the world. And I am bracing myself for a little bit more snow. We have about a half foot on the ground right now, Stuart, and we're getting close to another foot Tuesday night. So, it's just, it's a winter wonderland here. But I wanted to wish you a happy new year, my friend.
Thank you very much. And next week, we'll want to see the pictures of the snowman that you built.
I will do that, but I will make sure I'm clothed. There was a picture going around of someone they claimed was me with angel's wings, unclothed, just with boots. My father used to put it out on Facebook, and people really thought it was me because, of course, how would my father lie? But my father was this incredible combination of horse manure and sincerity. So he was a very charming gentleman. You just said that your dear Prime Minister told you life is getting worse in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, already most of the country is in what they call Tier 4 lockdown, but they've decided that the numbers are getting so bad that, in one place, our hospitals are at 96% capacity. And so they're introducing extra restrictions, like schools open today after Christmas, and they're closing tomorrow.
Wow. That's insane.
I mean, it's tough, but I think it's necessary because the numbers are. I mean, where I live, our numbers have gone up by 500% in about 3 weeks.
Oh my gosh. That's just.
I mean, the good news is that not only is Oxford, as you always call it, the intellectual capital, but today, the first person received the Oxford University AstraZeneca vaccine.
Wow. And who was that?
Well, he just happened to be somebody who was 82 years old because they're doing it age and working downwards. And they just have TV cameras because it was the first. But the government is planning to immunize 2 million people per week. That's the plan, and to have the most vulnerable 30 million people vaccinated by the end of February. It's a tall ask, but they're going for it.
Yeah, well, good for them. I mean, at least, it's our country still very divided on it. Everybody thinks, some people think that it's a communist plot or a Biden plot or something. I don't know. And I don't understand it. I just try to go, okay, well, let's deal with, this is a virus, and it can attack you whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or a young, thriving Marxist, and wear a mask and wash your hands. Pretty simple, but people aren't doing it. Yeah, in Wisconsin, the numbers have gone down a little bit, but I'm very curious about that because we're we're just starting to hit the winter, and people stay inside. And the nice thing has been is that the few restaurants in my little town that are open, people are doing takeout, thank God, and supporting the restaurants. But there's few people in the bars, which is good, and I just hope people stay smart, And although one of my little stores that I stop at did tell me that their liquor sales are up 100%, and I said, "Oh my gosh, okay."
So there was a thing going around on social media, which said, if the government could put the vaccine in beer and reopen the bars, they would have the entire nation vaccinated within a week.
I think that is, and the state of Wisconsin, by the way, that work. There's, in my town, there are, I believe, 38 bars and 10 churches, which I think is fascinating, but that's pretty well across Wisconsin. So our topics for today, I just saw that two Brits ran nice 3,000-meter runs and qualified for Torun. And our friends at European Athletics are waxing poetically about having Torun happen. I'm not sure they can do anything else. Do you think that we'll see Torun?
Well, they seem very determined to do it. The question may be who can actually get there.
Yeah.
I mean, I spoke to Andy Posey today, Andrew Posey, and I mean, he was telling me that earlier in the winter that he had come home to Britain and was planning to go back to Italy, but it took him 3 months to get there.
Wow.
So one of the things that our government is being pressed to do is to close the borders, not let anyone in unless they quarantine.
Yeah.
So if countries in Europe start doing that, it will make movement difficult for around Europe. And I mean, in terms of the British team, it will be selected following the trials on the 20th and 21st of February. But then there must be a question as to whether that event can actually take place.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think at the moment it would still be all right, but if things get worse, I think it will definitely have no spectators.
Yeah.
You know, Premier League soccer was allowed to have spectators for a bit, normally not more than 2,000, but that's all stopped now because the virus has got worse. I mean, I struggle with that one myself. If you've got a stadium that holds 75,000 people, I cannot see how you can't have a 2,000 or a lot more than 2,000 in it safely. But of course, one of the things they worry about is people getting into the arena and getting to the arena.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I know that a lot of British athletes want to do the indoors and want to do Torrent simply because they didn't compete enough last year.
Sure.
And like, I mean, Andy Poppy was telling me about making changes and needing to go out and practice in races, the things that he's been doing and doing in practice. And so he's keen. Abby Urzura, the long jumper, says she will compete at every place she can. But again, at the moment, the virus is worse than it was in the summer. And just how easy it will be to travel around Europe, I don't know. I mean, I think there are questions. You know, we talked about the indoor series, and it all looks good, provided people can get there.
Yeah, I know that New Balance indoor just changed from Feb 7 to Feb 13 due to the Millrose games canceling, and I'm just curious. I've got to talk to them and catch up and see what's going on there. It seems like the German meets are going to happen. But it's just we'll have to wait and see, you know. And it's
but I mean, whether American athletes would be allowed to come to Europe to compete now, or whether you know, you mentioning again New Balance, whether international athletes will be allowed into the States at the moment. I don't know. So I think those are one of the things that are outside the control of the meet organizers.
Yeah, no, I think you're correct on that. I just think it's going to be a challenge, and we will just have to take it one day at a time, because I think that's all we can really do to keep our sanity. We had started a discussion about our dreams for 2021 last week, and we had talked about getting some semblance of a track season. I tend to think we're going to have our challenges this winter. And really, as the vaccine becomes more prevalent in its availability, we're probably talking about a season starting in June or July. And, you know, perhaps going into the fall. We'll have lovely marathons in the fall, and perhaps they'll be able to move the season. And I just saw another article about our friends in Japan having to do another shutdown because of COVID. I think how do you do your weekly COVID Tokyo 2021 percentages this week?
I still think the games will take place, but How restricted they will be is the question. I mean, one understands that when you do surveys of the population, a lot of people still don't want the games to take place because they think it's a health risk, bringing in people from potentially 200 countries.
Yeah.
I mean, on the press briefings that I was on that I mentioned, they were saying they're confident they could do the game safely, even without a vaccine. I find it difficult to see how you can have 20,000 people living in an Olympic village together, social distancing. I think you and I, if we're there working, may find it's a very unusual experience and we don't have much access to athletes. I don't know. Because you have to have 2 doses of the vaccine to get protection, that's an awful lot. I mean, they're talking here about vaccinating 50 million people, and if you have to do that twice, it's an awful lot. Not just of actually physically having the vaccine, but actually having people to administer it at a time when your health professionals are under a lot of pressure. So I think there's still an awful lot of questions, but I think I'll still stick with my 60-40, that something recognizable as Olympics will take place.
Okay. Any other dreams for 2021?
Well, one of the things I'm delighted about, and not quite sure it's a dream, is that we'll be able to see something called the triple jump. You know, that extremely naughty discipline that the Diamond League didn't think should be included. You know, that is back in the program this year, and I feel quite excited about that. Well done, Christian Taylor. I just think that the way Christian conducted himself, that he didn't throw his toys out of the pram. He marshaled his arguments. He did it all with dignity, and his arguments have prevailed.
Yeah, no. Christian is a worthy spokesperson for the athletes group, and I'm glad that they're finally getting that off the out of the dream stages into something that makes some true sense. I think we're going to have a plethora of marathons for the fall. And won't be able to go to all of them, but it'll be weekend after weekend. So it'll be interesting to see who shows up where. I think there'll be some, we'll again see how deep London's pockets are, and a few of the others. And we'll see if we can get back from virtual marathons for the citizens, because I know that any marathon that can actually have a full field, and we didn't have many this year that could do it. I remember LA was able to do it, and I'm just trying to think since then what has been able to do a non-virtual and have there's been some smaller races, and I think they did some stuff in Europe, in the Czech Republic, where they had 10,000-15,000 people, but that was about it, And
what a sensible decision by London to decide at an early stage that they were not going to try and do a spring date, but to go for the fall. And I think that has got more chance of being normal than the Olympics, certainly.
Yeah, I think that. Well, I understand our friends in Boston staying with a spring date, but I just think that it's with what we see now, 3.5 months out, it's going to have to be incredible precision, and I just don't see that, because most of the runners very few runners are in groups that would be considered early users of the vaccine. Most of them are quite healthy. So I think that poses a challenge. and one wonders how that will affect things. So it'll be interesting to see. 2021 we're just getting there. My third thing for today was the best interviews of 2020. Give me your three best interviews in 2020.
The frightening thing is that when I started thinking about this, I have not done a face-to-face interview for 11 months.
Yeah.
And only one of my top three is a face-to-face one, and that is Shelley Ann Fraser Price in Glasgow, February. And one of the things we often say, and I'll just say it again, we're very privileged that so many of the people at the top of our sport are such nice people. And I had asked for an interview with Shelley when she was in Glasgow. I'd asked for a quarter of an hour, one-to-one with her. And British Athletics, Jamie, who's no longer there, said, I think it might be a bit difficult for me to get you as long as that with her, but I tell you what, I'll put you in the same taxi as her from the venue back to the hotel. And so we did the interview in the car.
Oh, nice.
And she knew she was doing it and could not have been nicer and more forthcoming. So well done her. Then I'll say Andy Young, because we had sort of just joked about me doing an interview with him. And then one Saturday, about May, June, July, I think it was actually, he just sent me a WhatsApp and said, if you're serious with doing that interview with me, I'm free this afternoon.
Wow.
And I had a great chat with him, and it went on for an hour. I kept saying to him, are you all right for time? And he said, yeah, I'm fine. And talked, and it was one of those interviews which I did it in its full version for you. Athletics Weekly used a bit of it, and Scottish Athletics have now taken a bit of it and credited RunBlogRun as the source. So,
whoa, that's nice wonderful.
When something goes out like that.
I think so too.
My third one, Jessie Knight, because it was just so refreshing to speak to somebody who was just at the beginning of her elite career, someone who had surprised herself by winning the British Indoor and running, I think it actually proved to be the 5th fastest time in the world this year, and then started running and winning hurdles races, and then deciding to give up her teaching job, cutting it from 5 days to 3 days so she could, as she put it, not train anymore, but rest around my training, and train at times of the day that suited me. So just lovely to see somebody making progress in the sport and hopefully making the Olympics this year. So those are my three.
Okay, I'm going to start with, let's see. I would have to say Galen Rupp. And it wasn't that Galen surprised me. It's that he was just, he's always been a good interview, and we've talked over the years. But it seems that as difficult as the pandemic has been, he seemed really happy to be around his kids and his wife and just being able to do his runs and kind of keeping it a little more relaxed. And our conversation was far-ranging, and I really, really enjoyed that. It was one of Mike, our producer, said it was one of our best of the year. I also thought that I really enjoyed Tiana Bartoletto. Tiana she is a beastmaster. She's one of the toughest athletes I've ever met. Totally competitive. But what's fascinating is when she's at the top of her game, like interviewing her after she won gold medals, she is the most articulate person on the stage. She just puts it right into perspective, and gives it to you. She gave quotes to people at the Olympics that they were like live quotes, man. They were just so well done, and she has that ability to focus. In our conversation, and again, all these were Zoom interviews this year. Our conversation was just she had moved into the Bay Area. She had figured out how to deal with her challenges, getting her own weight room, where to train, what kind of things in the whole idea of an athlete at every stage looking for improvement, and I really, really like that. Honorable mention, Christian Taylor. Part of it was his driving across Austria, and we've always had great conversations. Christian it's just not an interview. It's just like a conversation with a friend. The other one I got to say, Sam Kendricks. Sam is Sam's one of my favorite athletes. He's also someone, again, he has the gift of gab, but he's got that military precision that, like, when you ask him a question, he will really give you the information that you need. Like, we just had that interchange about what kind of a runway, indoor runway, that he prefers, and he explained why Steve Hooker, one of my faves, liked a different type of run-up than Sam did, and his insights into the communication. And then the last one I got to tell you, I've always had a warm place in my heart for Martin Rooney. I like Martin. He's got a great sense of humor. I think you could drop him out of bed and he could run a 44 point. I've watched that guy so many times, wondering where he's going to come up with the last run over that last 50 meters to get you guys into a medal. And my gosh, what was it, 11 out of 13 times in a championship he medaled. And I just, and I still like to tease him about the 800 meters. Always, I'll never let him get away with not, hey, you could have been a great 800 guy. But you were right. I mean, the thing about the athletes that we've been privileged enough to talk to, and the coaches, I got Raina Ryder was fascinating. And
that was a good interview. I enjoyed that one.
Yeah, and Raina's such and I used to love to sit in the stands and like watch him, Harry Mara, Fred Samara. And I remember doing that with Van Komeny one time. And Van Komeny figured out that I was following him around. And so we had a couple-minute chat. But I was I wanted to see what made Van Komeny tick when he was, managing you guys. And each one of these coaches, I mean, Neil Black was like that too. I remember a time, I think it was 2013, at the end of the season for the City Games up in Newcastle. And Neil was giving massages on the table to everybody, and then he was just sitting having dinner with the athletes. And the relationship between him and the athletes was so genuine. And what it reminded me of was that coaching is both art and science. And that anybody can get I can teach somebody how to coach the javelin or the shot put, but I cannot teach them how to have a relationship with a certain athlete. And that's why I would always tell athletes, this man or woman may be the best technical coach, but unless you can warm up to them, unless you can understand what makes them tick, unless you're going to let them see what makes you tick, it's not a relationship. It's not a coaching relationship. And that's the thing that, Dan Pfaff's like that. Think of the athletes that Dan's had. My God, 20 years later, they all tell you how much they love him, And it's just, to me, that's a gift. It's one of the things that I'm most fascinated about is coaching athlete relationships. And Lance Brauman is like that. Lance has this almost military way of of having in talking to athletes, there is just, this is the coach, this is the athlete. He keeps a distance, and there's certain people who continue to do that. And again, it's interesting. It's just a fascinating part of the culture. But
Can I
okay,
just respond? Can I respond to two things you said there?
sure.
The thing about Martin Rooney is just illustrates for me what the importance of the Rooney Rule.
Okay.
The Rooney Rule, as applied to relays, is that if Martin is in your relay squad, you're more likely to win a medal.
Yep. Yes.
That's the Rooney Rule.
No, I like that one.
And Dan Pfaff used to coach a friend of mine, Steph Reed, the Paralympic long jumper, and Steph tells the story about how they had changed something in their technique, and they went to a very small meet just to get in a practice with this new approach to the runway. And Steph jumped, looked at the distance, looked again, and then said, "Dan, I've just broken the world record." And Steph swears that Dan says, "Yeah. Now, on the runway, you really need to be..." I just thought it was wonderful. You know, the perfectionist coach. You may have broken the world record, but you're not quite doing what we practiced.
Not doing what we wanted. No. You got to stay focused. That's the thing. I put something else in because I wanted to chat, and you and I have had to spend time chatting about anti-doping. It's just a part of the sport. And someone ran something by me this week, and I wanted to run it by you.
Mm-hmm.
This was a person who has been an athlete, has coached, and has seen the sport from a lot of different places. And they told me that they don't believe that the price is high enough on doping punishments. And I said, well, pray tell, what do you suggest? And they said, first-time offenders, a $50,000 fine. I said, but you also charge the agent and the coach. And their belief is that there's no way that an agent or a coach doesn't know. And I am mixed about that. I am okay about, I do think, because I've had athletes tell me that have tested positive, that it was a business decision. And that they didn't, until the crime is so high, or the punishment is so high, so draconian, that that their career is over, that people are going to continue to do it. And I was curious to see, without having given you any information beforehand, what you think about a monetary fine for people who test positive. Is that going to do anything more? Are we looking at it wrong? Is there another way to look at things? I mean, is it just that it's wrong? Do we go at it from that viewpoint?
I mean, I think the monetary fine would apply unless you can do it almost as a percentage, because it's like I mean, in some sports you see people being fined. I mean, I just read about a Premier League soccer player being fined, $100,000, but he makes that every week.
Yeah. So what does it matter?
So what does it matter? The thing that bothers me most about this is that there does seem, and I mean, I have no expertise in this, I just observe.
Yeah.
There are athletes in the sport who are successful who are subject to so many whispers, but who've never actually failed a test.
Yeah.
Equally, there are people, and I'll name one, Aspel Kiprop, who's failed a test and who is absolutely adamant that he has never had an injection in the last 5 years, and
Yeah.
apparently that's the only way he could have had this drug. Then you get people like Brianna McNeil, who wins a gold medal in the Olympics, is invited to the White House, forgets to change her whereabouts, gets invited to a celebration in her hometown, forgets to change her whereabouts, and is banned for a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at times it seems that we're better at catching people who are inefficient, and yet, you know, I don't want to name names so we're not sued, but I mean, I remember watching one of the distance races in Rio, and an athlete I knew well came second and stormed through the mixed zone without speaking to anyone. And when I spoke to when I spoke to the athlete's agent, he said, "Well, the athlete thinks that the person who won the gold is not clean." And you know, circumstantially, you could see the case, but had not failed the test. So, and you think for the length of time a number of Russians
Yeah.
got away with it. So in a way, somehow, for me, the most important thing is, you know, it is also true in crime that they say it's not the length of the prison sentence, but the likelihood of getting caught. And if somehow I could be confident that we really were catching everyone, and that we were not catching people who were actually innocent.
Yeah.
But I don't know enough about it to know how one addresses that.
Yeah, you know, the reason why I even bring up this topic is I got very frustrated last week when USADA and WADA said that they're going to test the COVID vaccines to make sure there's nothing in there. And on one level, I got it, but on the other level, as someone who gets bombarded by PR people every day with the tune of about 50 PR things, and you know, 49 of them are absolute pieces of crap. I just said, what, are they having a bad news day? What's going on? And it just, that kind of stuff infuriates me. And like, I think of our favorite New Zealand shot putter, Valerie Adams. I remember asking Valerie, day after that Belarusian tested positive, and I wanted Valerie to be pissed off. I wanted to finally get a recording of her going, you know, this is BS. I have trained the last 20 years of my life, and I've had to deal with 4 of these people. I wanted indignation. And you know what she did? She told a couple jokes. And I realized that the lesson there was that this is part of her life. This is something that gives her life. And people have crossed lines. And just because they've crossed lines doesn't mean she's going to, you know? And, you know, it's like you see athletes. You know, I look at a guy like Nick Willis, and Nick's been around, and Nick's run, my gosh, 100 plus sub 4 minute miles. And, you know, the guy has, I know for a fact, he's gotten his medal, he moved up in medal because someone was doping. But when I saw his finish in Rio, and I rewatched it a few times thanks to his manager, Mark Wetmore, telling me how quick he moved, I thought it was, you know, him and Centowitz, that was just phenomenal. And you look at athletes like that, and you know there's athletes out there that have never won a medal. You know, was it John Brown took, what, 4th twice in marathons? You're a British marathoner. Always admired him. And I'm just kind of going, my God, you do that in 2 different Olympics against two totally different fields, you look at those things and you kind of go, wow. And so the majority of athletes, it's like, I don't know, maybe I am naive. I think the majority of athletes get it. They compete because it is something that they are called to do. And it's a complicated thing. The people that cheat have rationalized it. It's what the late James Dunaway used to call the art of lying, where people get to a point where they actually believe the lies. They say, my dad used to say, my dad would say he couldn't lie, or he tried not to lie because his memory wasn't that good, and he would, he'd have to, he'd, how do you continue that stuff? But people do that for years, and it's just.
But I don't want to get us into politics, but I feel at the moment both you and your country and my country shows that liars can prosper.
Yes, that's the
two things I would like to say on this. If someone fails a test and one is absolutely clear that it is a violation, I would wipe out their record completely.
Yeah.
Because I think it's very frustrating for an athlete, say, who has been beaten by a drug cheat in 2008 and finds that their record is wiped out from 2010, something like that.
Yeah.
That I would wipe out the complete. And also, you talk about the fine of 50,000. What would you do with the 50,000? I think you should give it to athletes who have lost money because of that cheat. And we talked about Jenny Meadows before, one of the nicest people in the sport. Yeah. And Jenny graciously would say, I think I lost $150,000 in income, on bonuses on contracts by being beaten by drug cheats. Some of them were disqualified afterwards, but you can't go back and get your bonus.
Yeah. No, you can't. I mean, it was, I remember Kathy Butler, the Canadian who competed for the UK, she went to UW out here, and she told me in 2003, I think it was, she lost mid 5 figures because a Russian who tested positive EPO, they screwed up the test. And so the athlete got to keep all her stuff. And it was the first time I figured I got it. I finally understood it. And I think that those things are just terribly sad. It's just, it's so, we, our friend Seb Coe has been chatting about, the Olympics are going to be held, that Tokyo is going to have better doping, and that, he thinks that, Gemma Ricci is the next, next superstar. And I got a kick out of that. It's nice to see Seb out chatting about track and field, but he didn't say anything about shoes. And, you and I will talk about that next week in Athletics Chat 35, because we're getting to the end, dear friend. Please stay safe. My best to your lovely wife and her patience with putting up with us every week. And someday I'll be able to take you both out to dinner and we can have a proper pint and all those kind of things too.
Absolutely.
And maybe I can watch you play golf, because I'm good at carrying the golf bag around, Stuart.
Good.
I have a good short game, but I don't know anything else about golf except that one should fish on the ponds. So
that sounds good.
Okay, my friend. A happy New Year to you. And this is Larry Eder and Stuart Weir. This is Athletics Chat 34. And thanks to Mike Deering, who's sitting in Indianapolis and diligently managing all of this. And we have just ended Athletics Chat 34. If you like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you love us, subscribe on YouTube. Stuart, great week, and we'll chat next week. Cheers.
We will indeed. Thank you.
Hey, sports fans, Larry Eder, RunBlogRun. This is Athletics Chat 34. The epilogue, or Larry's monologue, as some keen observers have noted. And I do appreciate that. So, Stuart Weir, here's the deal, the way it works. Stuart is in lovely Oxford, England, intellectual capital of the world. I'm in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, between Madison and Milwaukee. and intellectual capital of the Midwest, I must say. And we had some fun topics today. European indoor champs, one of my favorite meets to go to. I love European championships. And my glasses are really weird. It's like showing like weird things back. So I'm going to take them off. But the European champs in 2021 are supposed to be in Torun, Poland, outside of Bydgoszcz. Or you can fly into Warsaw or fly into Bydgoszcz, whichever one you want. But I wanted to be one of the 7,000 fans there every day. And I don't think that's going to happen. But it looks like the meet may happen. There was a nice 3,000 in the UK yesterday. A couple guys ran 7:52 and 7:54. They've qualified now for the Europeans. And yeah, we were just talking about Stuart, hopes it happens. I do too. We still think the Olympics is 60-40, but, we'll have to see. We'll have to see how these vaccines get around. The UK is having a tough time. The dear Prime Minister just said, hey, guess what? We have got to lock down again. So all of the UK is locking down. Kids went to school yesterday. They're staying home tomorrow. So that's kind of exciting. US, I'm not sure we're much better. We've got a lot of challenges over here. And there's part of it is half the country doesn't believe that there's a pandemic or that, I don't know, some famous person is, inside the little vaccine or there's a microchip being put into us. So anyway, if it's a microchip, I really hope that it increases my FICO score. Anyhow, dreams for 2021. I would like to see some track meets that people can actually go to. But I don't think that's going to happen until after July or August when we've got 50, 60 million people who have been vaccinated out there. It's going to take a while. 2021 is going to be a strange year. We'll have some good marathons in the fall. I hope we have some good track meets this summer. I'm 50-50 on the Olympics, but Stuart's a little more bullish about it than I am. Best interviews of 2020. Stuart had 3 very good athletes I thought were very interesting. I threw in my 3. I'll let you read about Stuart's, and I'll let you read about mine. I even threw a couple of honorable mentions in. We spent a little time on this whole doping thing, how to make doping more effective. I started out with saying, well, let's charge the athlete $50,000 because it bites. It hurts them where it can, and maybe it changes the approach. I think Stuart had a better thing, make it as a percentage, because some people 50,000 doesn't mean anything. For some, it means everything. And so it should be a percentage of what they're making. And I think that makes the most sense. I do believe the majority of athletes don't cheat, but I do believe that there are people who have done it for a long time who we've never caught. There are people who have never done it and been accused. There's just a insidiousness in doping, and it's sad. And it's affected the view of our sport and the quality of our sport. Looking to 2022, European champs, Commonwealth Games, World champs, Olympics in 2024. I think the pandemic will have changed everything, but I think that most things will have worked themselves out by then, but we're still always going to have to be careful. Funniest interaction in 2020. Didn't get to talk about that. Martin Rooney had a good sense of humor. Molly Huddle had a couple good ones to say. Gianna Bartoletto. Christian Taylor. Most track athletes do have a good sense of humor. We talked about Rainer Harry Mara. Coaches always know a good joke. And Lance Brauman, some of my favorites. But we're starting a new year out right. We've got a little bit of snow on the ground here in Wisconsin. Most people are having to stay home and isolate. Stay safe, please. Just be careful. And if you don't like wearing a mask, wear it because it takes care of the people that you love. Okay? This is Larry Eater with Athletics Chat number 34, the epilogue. Stay safe, exercise, hydrate, If you like us, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, please sign up. If you love us, subscribe on YouTube. Thanks to Mike Deering for producing all of 2020 and for producing the first episode of 2021. This is Larry Eater signing off.